The hardest business problems to solve are not the ones that announce themselves loudly. They are the ones that develop quietly inside something that appears to be working fine. I learned this in a way that was more expensive than it needed to be. I had a client delivery system that had been running smoothly for over a year. Clients were happy. Timelines were being met. Revenue was stable. There was no obvious reason to look at the underlying structure because the surface was giving me no signals that anything was wrong. And then, in the space of about 6 weeks, 3 things broke at the same time. A key process failed. A client relationship deteriorated in a way I had not seen coming. And a gap in the system that had never mattered before suddenly mattered enormously because the volume had crossed a threshold the system was never designed to handle. None of it felt sudden to me afterward when I traced it back. All of it had been building for months. The system had been absorbing pressure quietly, and I had been interpreting the continued outputs as evidence that everything was fine when what they were actually evidence of was that the system had not yet reached its breaking point. Those are very different things. A system that is working is not the same as a system that is healthy. Working means the outputs are still showing up. Healthy means the structure underneath can sustain those outputs without accumulating damage. Most builders never check the difference because the outputs are the only thing they measure. So the system keeps producing while the conditions that will eventually break it keep building quietly underneath. The failure feels sudden. It was never sudden. It was just invisible to everyone who was only watching the results. Understanding this required me to change how I thought about system maintenance entirely. I had been operating on a reactive model. Fix things when they break. Adjust when something stops working. That model feels efficient because it does not require spending time on things that are not currently broken. What it misses is that by the time something breaks in a way that is visible, the damage is already done. The cost of the failure almost always exceeds the cost of the maintenance that would have prevented it. Every system has a point beyond which it cannot absorb any more pressure without something starting to slip. Not a dramatic collapse. Just a quiet degradation where things take slightly longer, require slightly more effort, produce slightly less than they used to. Most builders interpret that degradation as a people problem or a motivation problem or a market problem. It is none of those things. It is a system that has been operating above its sustainable limit for long enough that the margin has run out. The outputs are still there. The capacity to maintain them is not. I started doing something I had never done before. At the end of every month, I would sit down and ask myself questions that had nothing to do with the outputs. Not how much revenue came in, not how many clients were happy. Questions about the system itself. Where did things slow down this month that should not have? Where did I have to intervene manually in something that should have run on its own? What nearly broke and why? Those questions surfaced things the revenue numbers never would have. Small frictions that were not yet costing me in any measurable way, but were clearly heading somewhere if I did not address them. Fixing them while they were small cost, a fraction of what fixing them later would have. Recognizing this pattern early requires building what I think of as internal indicators into every system you run. Not just the output metrics that tell you whether the system is producing, the process metrics that tell you whether the system is healthy. How long is each step in the process actually taking compared to how long it should take? Where are the handoffs happening smoothly and where are they creating friction? Which parts of the system require the most manual intervention to function? Those questions surface the stress before it becomes visible in the outputs. The most dangerous phase for any income system is not when things are going badly. It is when things are going well enough that you stop paying attention to the underlying structure. Growth masks fragility. When revenue is up and clients are happy, the pressure to examine whether the system that produced those results is actually sustainable is very low. The examination feels unnecessary. Everything is working. Why look for problems? That is precisely when the problems are accumulating fastest, because the conditions that produce good short-term results are often the same conditions that produce structural failure over a longer time horizon. The builders who avoid the sudden collapse are not the ones with better systems. They are the ones who never stopped checking the systems they had, who built the habit of looking underneath the outputs on a regular basis, even when the outputs were giving them no reason to, who understood that a system working well today is evidence of what happened yesterday, not a guarantee of what will happen tomorrow. Your systems will work until they do not. The question is whether you find out why before or after they break. Next, we are going to talk about something that quietly shapes the trajectory of every business. The invisible cost of saying yes too often. I will see you tomorrow.